In a 2005 poll that was organised by a Milwaukee newspaper, you were selected as the greatest high school player in the state's history. So that's an incredible honour.
Well, it is, but what they don't print is that I knew who was voting, and I made sure they got checks, and most of them cashed the checks, so I knew I was going to win it.
Oh, that's how it worked. I was wondering what story was it?
You got to know how to win these things, and I found out at an early age, sometimes those checks being cashed helps.
Then you are in Australia right now.
You're talking NBA basketball. You're talking great teams. You're talking great individual players.
Takes it off, and there's number 23, and of course Johnny goes nuts.
So I'll get goosebumps thinking about it now.
I just tried to go out there and play my game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Adam. I don't like anybody. I'm not a people person.
Strand, you made the pass. Yes. Christian, can you catch the ball? Yes.
All the stars were aligned and all the muscles fired at the right time, and I was able to get off the ground and throw one down.
I was saving that as a surprise for you.
And now, introducing your host for In All Airness, Adam Ryan.
Welcome to episode 33. Thanks for joining me. My website, inallairness.com. Just add a / and the episode number to view show notes. On this episode, I'm happy to welcome high school All-American, University of North Carolina standout and NBA veteran Joe Wolf. We discussed EuroBasket 2013, where Joe was an assistant coach to Mike Fratello, steering the Ukraine to a sensational 6th place finish, earning the team a guaranteed spot in the 2014 FIBA World Cup. Joe talks about his amazing high school basketball career, where he was, in 2005, named Wisconsin's greatest ever player. He discusses his career at North Carolina, playing alongside greats of the game, including Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, Brad Daugherty and Kenny Smith, to name just a few. We also learned Joe's whereabouts on the day he was drafted into the NBA in 1987. That's a fantastic story too. We break down his 11-year NBA career, the years since that he spent coaching in the CBA, the NBA's D-League, and most recently the 5 seasons he spent with the Milwaukee Bucks, where he finished 2013 as the lead assistant to Scott Skiles. You're about to hear the conversation. It was a great chat. There was a bit of humour injected throughout as well. I think Joe had as much fun as I did, so I really appreciated talking with him. Thanks, Joe Wolf. Thank you again to former guest on the podcast, Bob Hill. He was the linchpin that made this conversation possible, so many thanks again, Bob. Towards the end of the episode, I also have some more great listener feedback to share. I'm going to attempt to pronounce the name of the most recent iTunes reviewer. Could be a car crash waiting to happen, so stay tuned for that as well. Now, on to the show. My guest today was named a McDonald's High School All-American in 1983. He played for the University of North Carolina and is an 11-year NBA veteran. He spent 5 seasons as assistant coach of the Milwaukee Bucks and most recently served as an assistant coach for the Ukrainian national team. Joe Wolf, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you on. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today. Now, last month at EuroBasket 2013, you were an assistant coach to Mike Fratello, helping lead the Ukraine to a 6th place finish, and now you've got entry into the 2014 FIBA World Cup. How has that journey with Ukraine been thus far?
Unbelievable, and that's an understatement. Last summer, not this past summer that we played, summer of 2012, we had a group of Croatia and Austria, Hungary, Cyprus, and we weren't expected to come out of that group. And we went 6-2 and lost to Croatia, and one at the buzzer in overtime and another by 4, and really played some really solid basketball. We were deep and felt pretty good about putting our second unit on the court at all times. And so we kind of surprised people there. We kind of shook up Europe with the fact that we made EuroBasket, because in 2015, Ukraine is hosting EuroBasket. So not a lot of people expected much from us, although we are hosting it in 2015. So getting to this summer, we come in there and we're one of 24 teams, and the polls had us 24th and not winning a game. And we start out the tournament and we beat Belgium, one of the top teams. And we beat them by a point. Then we went 4-1 in the first round and lost to France by 6, which nobody expected us to move on to the second round. So right there, we did something. So from there, everybody was just giddy, just couldn't believe what was happening, so happy. And the second round starts and we lose to Latvia by 34. And everybody thought, oh boy, they're done now. And truth be told, we thought, well, what the heck happened to us? But Latvia played very well. We did not play well. So, the struggle with EuroBasket is if you get all the way to the end, you play 11 games in 17 days, and it's a very, very tough schedule. I can't think of another tournament like that with the quality of teams and the amount of games that you have to play that means something. The next game we play Serbia. And we had played Serbia 3 or 4 times in friendlies, the previous in summer of 2012 and before the EuroBasket. And we had lost to them by an average margin, I'd say about 30 points. And it was an amazing game, and we end up winning by 7. So now we just qualified for the quarterfinals, which was unreal in of itself. And before we get to the quarterfinals, we have to play Lithuania, very talented team, big team, very skilled, and we play hard. Last minute, it's a one-possession game. Unfortunately, we don't come away with the win, but that showed us that we could play with anybody. And after the tournament is all said and done, Lithuania took second, and so we knew that we lost to obviously a quality team. Well, we get to quarterfinals, and if you know anything about EuroBasket, it's if you lose your first game, you're in the 5th to 8th place game, or if you win, you're in the 1st to 4th place game. What was really key to that whole thing is that because Spain is hosting the World Championships, if they qualified in the top 6, then there are 7 teams that go from EuroBasket.
Okay.
And if they don't qualify in the top 6, then only 6 go. Obviously, we had our hopes up. So we play, who do we play now? Now I'm getting confused. I'm so excited. That's when we played Croatia.
Okay, yep.
That's when we played Croatia, who we know they've got a couple different players that didn't play the year before, but we know going in they're a very talented team, and we lose by 12 and played them tough again. They were just too good for us, and so we got into the bracket with the 5th to 8th place teams. So we're paired up with Italy, and Italy's ranked one of the top 10 teams in the world, so we're like, oh boy, this is going to be something. And you're playing these games day after day, and we end up winning by 6. And so now we've blown the top off of Europe, and we're playing for the 5th place in the EuroBasket, which nobody thought we would do, against the host country in Slovenia. Great game. We lose, so we play 6, and we qualified for the World Championship. So all in all, unbelievable 2 summers, unbelievable experience as a coach, unbelievable team that we coached, a great bunch of guys. There's nothing like a team that comes together, finds out who they are, performs well on the court, enjoys the experience, and wins. And now we have something to look forward to in the World Championships, which nobody had put their sights on before the EuroBasket started. So just a great summer and a great experience.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And you've got a good couple of years ahead too in terms of with Ukraine hosting the 2015 EuroBasket, as you just said. So that's really exciting, Joe. Now, you've also been working alongside former NBA coaches Mike Fratello and Bob Hill, who were both former guests on this podcast. And I must thank Bob for helping me connect with you today because he's been great in regards to that.
So you're good friends with Bob?
I'd like to think so, yes. He's been a great help to me. He was a guest in episode 14 from memory, and yeah, he's been a great help.
Let me be the first one to say I'm sorry that you have to put up with him.
I think he might think the reverse because he's been really good, and he must get emails. He must check his inbox and think, "Oh, not this Australian guy again." But but he's been fantastic. So, how well did you know those guys professionally before you came on board the Ukraine staff? Obviously, you had a lot of NBA links.
Yeah, I played against their teams when they coached in the NBA, and I was playing in the NBA, but I did not know them at all. And what a chance for me to meet 2 legendary NBA head coaches and to learn from them and to be able to work with them for 2 straight summers. It's been a fantastic experience in more than one respect. And meeting Mike and Bob and being able to work with them is one of those aspects.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, until I started researching for our chat today, I had no idea that you were such a big star at Kohler High School in your native Wisconsin. So I know that you're from a large family, as you said before. I think you're the youngest of 7 kids. Is that correct?
I am. Yep,
yeah,
I am.
So I'm betting that there's a fair bit of sibling rivalry that helps you develop those basketball skills growing up.
No question. We had little courts in the back of the house and a hoop, and it was anything that we had. We played American football, we played baseball, and we played basketball. And the thing with Mom's house, we didn't have a big house, and Mom worked during the day, so we weren't allowed in the house to mess it up. So we had to be outside doing something, and it was either one of those three things. Otherwise, you get in trouble. And with my father around, was a very big man. You didn't want to get in trouble because he let you know that trouble's not allowed.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you helped the team win 3 state titles and averaged over 30 points a game in your junior and senior seasons, which is just phenomenal stats there. How would you describe those high school years, Joe?
Well, Kohler is a small village. We actually make the plumbing fixtures, Kohler. They've got plants all over the world. So it's a tiny village of about, when I was growing up, it was about 1,200 people. Now it's actually about 2,000. And when I was growing up, it was anybody could be over for dinner. You'd have your doors open at night, and it was one of those towns that you say, man, I was so lucky to be raised in that town, because there was, a lot of good camaraderie. It was a great community in every sense of the word. So that being said, the guys I played with from my freshman year in high school to my senior year in high school were the guys that I grew up with from kindergarten on. And nobody moved a lot in those days, so we didn't have a lot of guys coming into school, leaving school. The guys I played with from as early as I can remember on a team were my teammates in high school. And we went through all of the ups and downs, and we won state championships. And to this day, that's what we talk about is how fun it was to be at practice, how fun it was to go to state and win the tournament, and very special memories.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that I read that all your brothers played at least at the collegiate level, and your older brother Jeff, I believe, also was actually played for North Carolina too before you went there, and then was drafted by the Bucks before you became a Bucks player too.
That's right. Even though I'm 6'11", I'm still not the biggest one in the house that I grew up in. He's actually always been my bigger and older brother. I've got another brother, John, that's about 6'10". He played college. My brother, Jim, about 6'6". He played at the University of Pennsylvania. And then I had a sister that was 6'3". She played at North Carolina also. So, yeah, if you went in the backyard and tried to get a game, you were probably, for me, I was probably getting beat until I got to be about 14, 15. Then I could hold my own.
Yeah, so yeah, well, that's true. So what sort of height were you throughout high school? Like you probably, 6'6", something like that, or even taller?
No, I was probably, my senior year, I was probably 6'9.5".
Okay.
I grew from when I was a freshman in high school. I started the year at 6'2" and grew to about 6'6.5", 6'7", and then from there it put on about a 3/4 of an inch every year until I got to college, where I grew about another 1 3/4 inches. So.
Oh, very handy indeed. Now, in a 2005 poll that was organised by a Milwaukee newspaper, I think it's called the Journal Sentinel, you were selected as the greatest high school player in the state's history. So that's an incredible honour.
Well, it is, but what they don't print is that I knew who was voting, and I made sure they got checks, and most of them cashed the checks, so I knew I was going to win it.
Oh, that's how it worked. I was wondering what story was it?
You got to know how to win these things, and I found out at an early age. Sometimes those checks being cashed helps.
Well, they certainly came through with the goods, that's for sure. So yeah, that's a really great honour. So I also read that in your high school, your senior year of high school, you had a couple of big name visits from some potential college coaches that came and scouted a couple of your games.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be recruited by almost everybody in the nation. So I had all of the big name college coaches that were coaching then come through the house, Bobby Knight and Digger Phelps, and obviously Coach Smith. So we had a lot of college coaches, and it wasn't only me as the family, but my brother Jeff, my brother Jim, my sister Judy had the coaches come through too. So I just was fortunate enough that they probably knew me more because they had recruited my brothers. And felt like, well, this kid's got a shot too. So they were familiar. They knew how to get up to the little village. They enjoyed coming up there. So the thing is, in my neck of the woods, we have bratwurst, and I don't know if the Australian audience knows what bratwurst is, but it's like a sausage, and we are famous for it here in my county of Sheboygan in Wisconsin, and Johnsonville brats are something to be known for. And my dad would always cook brats every time the coaches came through to see me at the house. So we had a lot of brats my senior year with a lot of the famous coaches in the college ranks.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that would have, I guess, kept the tourism industry in your little town there in business, with all the coaches rolling through town, checking you out and your family out as well.
Yeah, it was I always wondered what the rental car business and the hotel business was like my juniors and senior year.
Yeah, that's good. Now, you went to North Carolina for college, so your freshman season was also Michael Jordan's junior year, and then he turned pro after that season. In the NCAA tournament, the Tar Heels made it to the Sweet 16 before losing to Steve Alford and his Indiana Hoosiers. How was that first season at UNC?
Well, I always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina, and I think it really helped him, because look at where he is now. I mean,
Yeah, he did pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he probably doesn't say it as much as I do, but it's out there, and I've put it out there. It was a great season. We had Michael, we had Sam Perkins, who played 16, 17, 18 years in the NBA. Brad Daugherty was the number 1 pick in the NBA draft one year. Kenny Smith was actually a roommate of mine at Carolina. He was my class. Dave Popson played in the NBA. So we had a lot of talent. Unfortunately, Brad got hurt his hand and wasn't as effective down the stretch, and Indiana played us really well. But what a season it was.
Yeah, it definitely was. Now, from your sophomore season onwards, you had a much more significant impact with the Tar Heels. What were the circumstances that led to the increased responsibility and playing time that you got there, Joe?
Well, I think it was just graduation of players. Michael leaving, Matt Daugherty leaving, Sam Perkins leaving, opened up the front line spots. So I played more small forward and power forward as the days went on. My sophomore year, we weren't supposed to do anything because Michael had left, and we had a really good season, and a lot of the younger guys, and I'm included in that, got a lot of valuable time on the court, and we really were a great passing team. All my teams in college, the ball hardly ever hit the floor unless it was going through the hoop, because we just would pass and screen and move. Our motion offense was phenomenal.
Yeah, now I was poring over some of the stats from the UNC official website, going through some box scores and all sorts of stuff before we chatted today, and I noticed that in the ACC tournament in 1987, you scored 27 points, including 5 3-pointers in the semi-final game. It was a double overtime 2-point victory against Virginia. I'm guessing you remember that game quite fondly?
Actually, Adam, I don't remember games that well. I do remember we lost to NC State. Vinny Del Negro, they said I fouled him with about 10 seconds left, and I'm still to this day, he and I laugh about the fact that I didn't even come close to him. But I don't remember games that well. Now that I'm coaching, I remember them better because I watch film so much. They become instances in my head. I've got a lot of college buddies that if I need to remember something from a game, they remember it, so I just call them, or same with my high school buddies. I've never been good at recalling, I had, this and that against so-and-so, or I just remember the good times and how much fun it is to compete with a great bunch of guys.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. And perhaps some of the real tough losses, like the one you mentioned, which I think was the next day, maybe the day after, those sort of things maybe burn even more into the memory banks than the actual wins that you had.
I believe you're right, especially with me. That's the way I work. Yep.
Yeah, yep. Now, you mentioned some of these names already, but you played alongside some UNC legends like Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, Brad Daugherty, Kenny Smith, and you were also co-captain of the Tar Heels in 1987 in your senior season. What are your best memories from those guys or from that era in general, Joe?
That just what I said prior to this. Great passing teams, unselfish. We were a high-paced team, and we really enjoyed playing with each other. And that the chemistry is such a big part when I coach now. It's such a big part of what I believe in. It's one of those components that's critical, but you can't teach it, and you really don't know how it's going to work until you get into practice and see how the guys come together.
Yeah, and speaking of coaching, in college, during your college years, current Tar Heels head coach, Roy Williams, was an assistant to the all-time great Dean Smith. Do you mind just talking a little bit about the influence that those legends have had on your game and your life in general?
Well, Coach Smith was so thorough. He was great with everyday practicing habits, and those habits were obviously basketball fundamentals that I use and I teach to this day. He was great in terms of teaching us on the court, but he was also great at teaching us how to be young men off the court because we were 18 to 22 years old. Most of us were away from home, and we had to learn how to grow up. And he was a great teacher of life, and I have high regard and respect for him for obviously doing that for me and for my teammates. Coach Williams was a big man coach, and he took us through our jump hooks every day. A lot of energy. Great guy, great storyteller. Have a lot of fond memories of Coach Williams, not only when I played there, but post playing too.
Yeah, and how closely do you follow UNC's movements these days?
Well, I'll probably, since I don't have a job right now, I'll probably be following them more this year. But when I was working in the NBA, I didn't catch many college basketball games, but if I did, it was going to be Carolina. And just because the work you have so much work in the NBA, you're always watching NBA basketball.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, in the 1987 NBA draft, you were picked number 13 by the LA Clippers. That 87 draft had 3 Hall of Fame players, Scottie Pippen, David Robinson and Reggie Miller, and also 3 or 4 other All-Star players as well. I've recently watched the draft via YouTube. I didn't actually see you there in person. Were you there, or were you just watching from a remote site somewhere?
Actually, that's a funny story. Coach Smith said, "No, you know, go spend it with your family." It's this big. Obviously, we talked about it. Come from a big family. I wanted to share it with them, and we came home. But in my little village, we didn't have cable, so the only person that had cable was Mr. Kohler, who's the chairman of the Kohler Company. So he allowed us to go to his house and watch it on his TV, because I think he must have had a dish or something at that point. I was able to see it on TV, but it wasn't even at my mom and dad's house. It was at Mr. Kohler's house.
Right, that's an interesting insight there. I never knew that was the case. Now, how was it though when you heard your name get called out? You're obviously surrounded by friends and family in a really close-knit community. So how did that actually feel, hearing your name and knowing you were going to turn pro?
Well, it was a very proud moment. You know, I had worked hard in that little town to develop my skills, and that village meant so much to me growing up. It is a big family, and to be able to share that with friends and family was a huge experience for me.
Yeah, that's great. Now, the other All-Stars from that 87 draft that I alluded to a moment ago, it was Horace Grant, Mark Jackson, KJ, Kevin Johnson, and also the late Reggie Lewis. So a phenomenal draft class in 1987. Now, your first 3 NBA seasons were spent with the LA Clippers. You averaged about 6 points and 4 boards a game in about 20 minutes per night. The best season that you had as a team was 30 and 52 in 1990. What do you recall most about the first few years in the league there, Joe?
A young team that had no experience, that we got our butts whipped almost every night that first year. And as we developed through the draft, more talent, we were gaining ground to become a better team. The likes of Danny Manning and Charles Smith helping us, and then the acquisition of Ron Harper. You know, we got to be pretty good. Harp went down with a knee injury that third year. Otherwise, I thought we were a playoff team. I think they did make the playoffs the next year or the year after that, but I was in Denver then.
Yeah, you just missed the boat there in terms of the building process to get to the playoffs. And unfortunately, by the time, a year or two later, I think 92 was the season that they made the playoffs, that you were also at Denver at that stage. How was a young Ron Harper to play with before his injuries? Obviously, he was a fantastic player throughout his whole career, and he managed to adjust his game to suit whatever team he was on. But when he was at his most athletic, can you describe some of the things that you saw him do either in practice or in games, and how great a player he was?
You know, Harp was a mini Michael Jordan. Wasn't as fierce a competitor, and I don't know who is as Michael, but his talent in terms of length, skill, being able to shoot it, take it to the hole was phenomenal. He was one of those guys that you're saying, you know, this is a good chance for us to build around him, because he was that good, and then unfortunately went down with that knee.
Yeah, that was quite troubling, no doubt. Now, as you mentioned, just before the 1991 season, you signed as a unrestricted free agent with the Nuggets, and you played 2 seasons in Denver, and you had some similar sort of numbers in about the same amount of minutes per game. In your second season with the Nuggets, you were a backup to a rookie named Dikembe Mutombo, who had become an 8-time All-Star, obviously a legend of the NBA ever since, really. How was your time in Denver, and what do you remember most fondly about that particular scenario?
Well, I just remember Dikembe being one of those character guys. He loved to joke around, and he has this big husky voice that would fill a room, and his laugh is tremendous. A great teammate, And, we didn't win many games, but his growth for that year was tremendous, and I really enjoyed him as a teammate.
Yeah, it sounds like he's, from what I've seen on footage on TV and whatnot, he seems like a fantastic guy, and obviously had a great NBA career, only recently retiring not too long ago. Now, in the 1993 season, you signed as a free agent with Boston, and then you also were with the Trailblazers. Following that season, you decided to head over to Europe and play professionally before you came back to the NBA for the 95 season. Were those 2 years a challenge, or did you welcome the move to Europe for that 1994 season?
Well, it was a business move then, because because of the collective bargaining in the NBA, most of the guaranteed spots for the NBA were being taken up by the draft picks. Those guys that hadn't even played were getting these monster contracts and guaranteed deals, and so I knew I could make more money overseas than I would in the NBA, and that's the reason I did it. It was purely a financial and business move.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. I didn't actually know the story behind it. So according to basketballreference.com, which is one of my favourite sites when I do my research for these sort of chats, it listed you as playing in Spain. Is that correct?
That's right. I played in Leon, Spain.
Okay. How was that experience in the European League?
Phenomenal. It was great in the respect that I got to tour Europe, and I didn't have to pay for the flights or the hotels. And it was also phenomenal in the respect that I got to play a lot of minutes, and that helped me, I think, fine-tune my skills again, because in the Boston, Portland years, I didn't play much, and I needed to play more to recapture my skills, and so that was great. But the culture in Europe is fantastic. I loved it.
Oh, great. Good to hear. Now, in free agent signings for the 95 and then the 1996 seasons, you were a member of the Charlotte Hornets and then the Orlando Magic. In both seasons, in playoff action, you met the Chicago Bulls. In 1995, MJ had just only recently returned from his first retirement, and then in 1996, that was Chicago's 72-10 demolition job on the NBA. What are your thoughts on those two seasons, and then how about that particular Eastern Conference Finals matchup, the Orlando Magic taking on the Chicago Bulls?
Well, let me just tell you, let me start this out by saying that Michael Jordan, he's not terrible. When you faced one of his teams, you knew you were in for a great game. But Charlotte was great. Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning and Dale Curry and Robert Parrish and Muggsy Bogues, Hersey Hawkins. I mean, we had a great team. Michael's teams were just better. I didn't play exceptionally many minutes, but the guys were great on the team. And then the next year in Orlando, I played with the young Shaq and Penny Hardaway, and we were feeling our oats. So I think we won 60 games that year, and unfortunately, we met Michael in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they swept us because they were really, really good. We were good, but obviously by sweeping us, they showed us that we weren't at their level yet.
Yeah. Now, in your last few seasons in the NBA, and even probably before that, really, you would have been, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would have been acting as a mentor to some of these other big men that you were playing with. Can you just talk a little bit about that sort of role that you played, maybe behind the scenes, and some of the guys that you actually spent a fair bit of time with helping develop their games?
Well, I think the mentor role comes in that you want to make sure that you're working in practice every day, keeping in shape, because I wasn't playing many minutes. I was fooling people to get contracts, I think. I think I was faking them out just to get a contract. But I was always, I guess the mentoring that I did was to make sure that I showed up for practice and I competed. And, whomever was on the other team, I was going to give it my all. Hopefully they learned that sometimes talent doesn't win out, but sometimes if you work hard, that's a skill too. And hopefully the younger guys that were on those teams appreciated me for that fact.
Yeah, and I'm sure it also helped with your development into what would become your future of involved in the coaching realm as well. So, yeah, I can see that for sure. Now, in 1997, you returned back home playing for the Milwaukee Bucks. Can you just describe briefly the emotions or the feelings of being able to return back to your home state and that season in general?
That was an up and down season. I thought we were a very, very good team, but we had some dysfunction, and that's what hurt us. We started out very strong, and then something went awry, and we really plummeted at the end of the season. We didn't have the greatest leadership for the guys that played. Cohesive spirit wasn't there, but to play at home and to have my family come down and see me in a lot of games was truly special. I mean, that's I guess what it's all about. If you want to take the circle of basketball life, growing up in a small village and then shooting hoops outside your house and winning state championships and thinking, hey, I'm 30 some odd years old and now I'm playing for the Milwaukee Bucks, my hometown NBA team. It's a pretty neat experience.
Yeah, sure. Now, in 1998, that was your last full NBA season, and you made a return back to the Denver Nuggets. Now, I had a look at the roster last night just to go over some of the names so I was familiar with who was playing. You were one of only 4 players on the team that had at least 5 years NBA experience, so a lot of rookies and obviously second, third year players. Pretty tough season, I'm guessing?
That is an understatement.
I didn't want to mention the win-loss record. I didn't want to actually put that into perspective. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, because there's no need to sugarcoat it. We were terrible. We didn't have enough talent. The talent that we had was young, and we weren't good. What did we win? 11?
I think it was 11 and 71 from memory.
Yeah, and I think we won 2 in the last week. So that last week we were world champions, but the previous weeks we weren't so good.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I'll just cut you off there.
No, it's one of those seasons that you learn a lot from, but it's not the good stuff that you learn.
Yeah, I can only imagine for sure. Now, we know that Michael Jordan often shares a soft spot for his fellow UNC teammates or alumni. Did you and MJ interact much during your NBA career, given your links, particularly as former teammates on that 1984 squad, or was he just completely ruthless pretty much 24/7?
Oh, no. When Michael gets on the court, there's no former teammates or he's my brother or he's my cousin or, he's my roommate. If you're on the other team, you're on the other team. And he's going to beat you or try to beat you. So no, that doesn't come into Michael's vocabulary. In fact, it might just be the opposite, where he's going to try to get you more because he knows he's going to talk to you more than the other guys after the game. So there's added incentive in that respect.
Yeah, he's obviously an incredibly fierce competitor, probably like the likes of which we've never seen since and probably never will see. We'll just have to see, I guess, how well LeBron James' career finishes up and what Kobe can end up doing in the last couple of seasons of his career. Now, after a brief second stint with the Hornets in the 1999 lockout shortened season, you've retired from the NBA. So, of your 11 NBA seasons, do you have a particular favorite team or period of time that you were in the league?
Well, when you win 60 games in the NBA, it's a pretty special season, and that was a very special season for us. We were probably the second best team in the NBA. Unfortunately, we met the best team in the NBA in the Eastern Conference Finals in the Chicago Bulls, and they swept us. But boy, oh boy, I tell you what, the guys that I played with and see to this day, we talk about the experiences we had that year. And Shaq and Penny were absolutely fabulous. They were young in their career, but boy, they could really, really play, and it was fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, you've played with some great players over that time. There's no doubt about that. Now, in the mid-2000s, you were head coach of the Idaho Stampede in the CBA, and then in 2007, 2008, you served as head coach, and I think also you were GM of the NBA D-League's Colorado 14ers. Do you mind just talking a little bit about those years and what lessons you learned that helped you then get your spot in the NBA?
Well, I had a hard time getting an NBA assistant's job or any type of job, so I had to do a different route. I had to go to college for a year at the College of William & Mary and be an assistant coach, and then I was fortunate enough to get an interview to become the head coach in Idaho for the CBA. And that was just I had been assistant to my brother in high school for 4 years, so it was basically my sixth year of coaching. And I got a job as a head coach. So I was very fortunate in that respect. The thing about the CBA, the Continental Basketball Association in the U.S., is the fact that you got to do it all yourself. You got to set up the practices. You got to tape the guy's ankles. You got to sweep the floor. You got to turn on the lights. You got to make sure that the towels are ready for those guys to. And then you have to have a practice plan, and you have to make sure the guys are healthy, and you have to make sure that none of the guys are going overseas on a bigger contract or they're getting called up by the NBA. And if they are, then you got to talk to the agents to make sure that you can fill those spots. So it's a learning process. You know, I tell people my brother went to Northwestern MBA school and got his Master's of Business Administration. I wasn't able to do that. I didn't get any post-grad degree. I guess the post-grad degree I got was in coaching and going to the CBA and learning that. That was my school of hard knocks, because the wins and the losses were all on me, because I had to get the players. And if my players weren't talented enough, we were going to lose. And if my players weren't prepared enough, then we were going to lose. And boy, oh boy, I tell you what, when you put yourself in that spot every night, it can be very, very gratifying and very satisfying. And when you win and when you lose, it's just the opposite. It's the most heartbreaking, nerve-wracking, non-sleeping nights and times that you can have. But you do learn a lot. You learn about the game. You learn how to teach the game. You learn how young players progress and develop, and how you can help them with that. And I'm very thankful that I was able to spend 4 years in the minor leagues as a head coach and GM, because the time I spent there was invaluable.
Yeah, listening to you discuss that time, then it sounds like it was just completely all-consuming, and as you mentioned, a lot of sleepless nights, I'm guessing, through some of the rougher periods of time in that 4 or 5 year span too.
No question. Yeah, that's a very valuable time in my life. Yeah.
Now, following that time with the D-League, you then took the step to the NBA and you spent 5 seasons, and most recently, last season, you finished as the lead assistant with the Milwaukee Bucks. Do you mind just talking a little bit about the time you spent with Milwaukee and what you've since learnt from that particular time?
Well, to compare it from where I came from, the minor leagues is about scoring points, because the guys are trying to make a name for themselves, and the way they make names for themselves is to score points and get numbers. So you have to have a very high-paced, energetic offense so that everybody touches the ball and everybody feels good, and you score a lot of points so that everybody at the end of the day can get better contracts, whether it be overseas or from an NBA team. So then I have 4 years of that, and then I go to Scott Skiles, who is a demanding, hard-nosed defensive coach. And for me, the 5 years that I spent with him were great because I learned about that side of the game, the defensive side of basketball, from a guy who has put up a great defensive team, and what it takes, what you're looking for, what habits you're building, what drills you're running. You know, I've just been fortunate in my career to work with some great people.
Great. Now, with Larry Drew leading Milwaukee into a different direction this coming season, are you able to shed any light on your plans for 2014 and beyond? I mean, obviously you still got the association with the Ukraine national team, but in terms of NBA, what do you hope may happen, or what are you looking to do in the coming season or two, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, I'm going to work at my Dairy Queen, first of all, and make sure that that's running really well. And then during this year, I'm going to look at hopefully, every year there's some coaches that get fired, and hopefully new staffs, and hopefully I can become a part of those new staffs, one of those staffs, I should say. But it's just a process. Unfortunately, I'm not in the NBA right now, but I hope to get back in there. It's not easy to get back in, but we'll just keep trying.
Yeah, understandable. And I'm glad you mentioned the Dairy Queen franchise there, because before we started recording the conversation, you were talking briefly about that. For some unknown reason, I remember a clip from the Inside Stuff TV show back in the 1990s where they did a feature on you and the Dairy Queen franchise that you were running at the time. And that's still in your family, and you've now had that for 22 years that you were saying. So that's an incredible amount of time to be associated with that, also having been a professional basketball player and coach in the interim.
Yes, and I tell you, I'm sitting in the parking lot right now making sure my workers are working well with the drive-through while I'm talking to you. So there's never a minute wasted, Adam, if you know what I'm saying. If you're a franchisee owner, you got to make sure that these people are working and doing the right thing and getting the food to the customer as quickly as possible and as fresh as possible.
They're probably wondering, who's that tall guy out there in the car with those binoculars?
I'm actually sitting about 30 feet from the drive-thru, so I can see everything.
Oh, very good. No, that's great. So it's just been a pleasure to chat with you today, Joe, and I really appreciate the time that you've afforded me. I just love talking about old school NBA and all things basketball. So is there a particular way that people can keep in touch with your movements online? I don't think you're part of Twitter or anything at this stage. Do you plan to join Twitter?
No, I don't. I'm one of those guys that I can text, I can use my cell phone, but I am never going to be on Facebook or Twitter unless it's mandated by somebody who's paying my checks. So no, I don't get caught up in all that. That's for my nephews and nieces, and I understand it. I appreciate it, but that's not me. You know, Adam, I'm driving a 1997 F-150 with 198,323 miles on it. So I'm not into that world of the high techness, and probably won't ever be. But I do appreciate what it does for the world. Wow. I do have something, Adam. You know, one of my former teammates had a great career in Australia, Cecil Exum, and if he's listening to the broadcast, I would just like to say hi to him because he was one of the most pleasant souls I have ever been around. He's a great basketball player, but boy, you talk about a great person. Cecil Exum is top 10 in my list.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. I'll definitely do what I can to make sure that he's aware of the episode because I do have some really good support here in Australia and through the USA as well with the listener base, but I'll try and do what I can to make sure he hears this one because I'm sure he'd be thrilled to hear that coming from you after your long association with him, which I'm sure goes back to well into the early 1980s, I guess, back in UNC days.
Yeah, Cecil was a senior and I was a freshman.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'll do what I can to make sure he's aware of this. And it's just been a real thrill having the chance to chat with you today. So thanks again, Joe, and I do appreciate your time.
Adam, and I want to let you know that anytime you come through Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin, I'll buy you a Blizzard at my Dairy Queen.
Fantastic. I'll be on the first flight over.
All right, perfect. Great talking with you.
Thanks again, Joe. It was a pleasure to chat with you. I encourage you to interact with the show. Suggest topics for future episodes or guests that you'd like to hear conversations with. I welcome voicemail comments or questions on my website or Facebook page. Okay, now time for some listener feedback. I apologise in advance if I pronounce this horribly incorrect, but I do appreciate the review nonetheless. A huge thanks to Ulf from Germany for an excellent iTunes review. Recently added to the German, surprise, surprise, iTunes store. It's great to get some feedback from the European listeners, and I do appreciate you taking the time to let me know that you enjoy the podcast, so thanks again. Worldwide, the show currently has 18 reviews and 22 5-star ratings, so that's just fantastic. Thank you very much. If you add a review, I'd love to mention your name in a future episode. Okay, it's getting to be beyond a cliche. However, your ratings and reviews are the ultimate assist. They do help me reach a wider audience for the podcast, and that allows the show to get greater exposure, which then leads to more great guests in the future. So that is why I continue to say those lines, as corny as they might sound. You can subscribe to my show on iTunes or simply add my RSS feed. Check out the right-hand sidebar of my website. You can hear the show on Stitcher, Player FM and other podcatchers. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.